Do not look outside. Do not check the moon. Do not open your curtains to see whether this broadcast is telling the truth. If you are hearing this indoors, stay indoors. If you are near a window, turn your chair away from it now. If there is a mirror in front of you, lay it flat. If there is water in a glass beside you, cover it. If your phone screen is dark, do not let it face the window. This is AM 1720. My name is Daniel Hale. At 11:42 p.m. Central Time, the moon turned red. That by itself would not be enough for an emergency transmission. A red moon can be explained. A blood-colored sky can be photographed. An eclipse can be predicted, measured, and watched safely. But at 11:46 p.m., people began disappearing from places where the moon was visible. And at 11:51 p.m., the first name vanished from our call log while the caller was still on the line. I am going to say that again carefully. The person did not hang up. The line did not disconnect. The voice did not stop because the person died. The name stopped existing in our system. Then the address field cleared. Then the emergency callback number emptied itself one digit at a time. And then the only thing left in the incident column was a single phrase typed by a machine that does not normally generate text. Visual exposure confirmed. If you are listening to this broadcast because you saw the moon and came inside, do not panic. Panic makes people verify. Verification is what we are asking you not to do. Do not check social media. Do not search for images. Do not look through a window. Do not ask someone else to look. Do not use binoculars. Do not point a camera through glass unless the screen is covered from your direct view. Do not test whether this warning applies to you. This is not a challenge. This is not a rumor. This is not a story being told to frighten children. Inside the world of this transmission, the rule is simple. Do not observe the red moon directly. At 9:15 tonight, this station was scheduled to run a late-night public science segment. Nothing dramatic. A simple lunar visibility bulletin. Weather conditions were clear over most of the county. There was high-altitude haze to the west, thin cloud cover near the river, and a mild temperature drop after sunset. The kind of night where people stand in driveways with coffee mugs and say the sky looks bigger than usual. The moon was nearly full, not fully eclipsed, not scheduled for totality, not expected to turn red. At 10:03 p.m. I received a routine notice from the Regional Observatory Relay. The color index was normal. The brightness level was normal. The apparent position of the moon was normal within the tolerance of the instruments available to the station. At 10:47 p.m., one of the overnight volunteers left a note beside the weather printer. Moon looks low. That was all. I did not think about it. The moon often looks low near the horizon. The atmosphere can make it swell and smear and glow orange. People mistake that for something special every month. At 11:12 p.m., the first listener called the station line and asked whether we were covering the eclipse. I told him there was no eclipse scheduled for this region. He said he was looking at one. I checked the desk monitor. The moon on the feed was pale, white, ordinary. I checked the backup camera, white. I checked the observatory mirror feed, white. I told him it was probably atmospheric haze. He said it was not haze. He said it was the color of a darkroom bulb. Then he went quiet, not dead quiet, listening quiet, the kind of silence a person makes when something outside has changed but their brain has not caught up to the change yet. I asked him to step away from the window. He did not answer. The line stayed open for 72 seconds. Then the call dropped. The caller ID remained on my screen. His name was still there then. I remember it because I wrote it down by hand, not because I expected it to matter, because I had a habit. And whenever a caller sounds frightened, I write the name on paper before I trust the system to keep it. I am looking at that paper now. There is a blank space where the name should be, not scratched out, not smudged, blank. The ink is gone from that one line. The pressure mark is still there. The paper remembers that something was written. The ink does not. At 11:24 p.m., a second caller reported a missing person. I am not going to repeat personal details. I will keep this procedural. A woman had stepped onto her back porch to photograph the moon. The person calling from inside the house heard the porch door open. He heard the sound of bare feet on wood. He heard the phone camera shutter once. Then no footstep came back. The porch camera recorded an empty porch. The door was open. The phone was on the deck. The photograph saved to the phone showed only a black frame with a red band across the top edge. The caller said he could still see the moon through the kitchen window. I told him to get away from the glass. He said he could not find his wife. Then he corrected himself. He said he could not remember who he was looking for. The call continued for another minute. By the time it ended, the incident software had relabeled it as a wrong number call. I did not do that. The system does not do that. At 11:31 p.m., the local weather repeater began interrupting its own automated forecast with a tone I had never heard on this equipment. Not the emergency alert tone. Not the county siren relay. A thin pulse, 2.5 seconds apart. Pulse, silence, pulse, silence, pulse. Every pulse raised the noise floor on our AM band by a fraction of a decibel. At first, I thought it was interference from a nearby transmitter. Then the telescope relay sent its first urgent line. Lunar source read in direct optical view, camera feeds unchanged. That was the first contradiction. The moon was red to human observers. The moon was normal to delayed camera feeds. Live eyes and recorded images were no longer receiving the same sky. I need you to understand what that means. A camera can lie because of exposure. A screen can lie because of calibration. A lens can flare. A sensor can bloom. But human observers across several towns were reporting the same deep red moon, while the recorded feed remained white. Not slightly different, not delayed by weather, white. As if the instruments were watching yesterday, as if the sky had made an exception for anything that could not be afraid. At 11:34 p.m., the observatory called the station through the landline relay. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, and tired. I am not going to replay it. I am not going to imitate it. I will only report what was written in the relay note before the note changed. The observatory had ordered its staff not to look through the main optical telescope. They were using camera feeds only. They had covered the direct eyepiece. They had shut the public viewing deck. They had sent 2 graduate observers to lock the exterior walkway doors. Only one returned on the security feed. Then the feed corrected itself. The second observer had never been in the hallway. Then the shift schedule corrected itself. The second observer had never been assigned. Then the payroll directory corrected itself. The second observer had never worked there. The person on the observatory line said the name out loud once. The station transcript caught the first syllable. Then the transcript field blanked. By the time I looked down at my own notes, the blank had already spread into my handwriting. This is why I am speaking slowly. This is why I am not giving names. Names appear to be unstable after direct visual exposure. Do not write down the name of anyone who has looked at the moon. Do not type it into your phone. Do not try to preserve them by repeating them. The record may be the thing that vanishes first, or the record may be where the vanishing begins. We do not know. At 11:39 p.m., AM 1720 switched from regular overnight programming to emergency continuity mode. The first instruction was simple. Stay indoors. Close curtains. Avoid direct visual contact with the moon. At that time, we still believed the hazard required line of sight. That was wrong. At 11:43 p.m., a bus depot guard disappeared after seeing the moon reflected in a windshield. At 11:44 p.m., a child's bedroom monitor captured red light crossing a wall from a mirror across the hall. The child was not in the bed when the parent entered. At 11:45 p.m., the county dispatch log listed 31 open missing person calls. At 11:46 p.m., the log listed 29. At 11:47 p.m., it listed 17. At 11:48 p.m., it listed 6. The calls did not resolve. They simplified. The system was not finding people. It was removing the category of people who needed to be found. By 11:50 p.m., the phrase missing person had disappeared from the county dashboard for 19 seconds. When it returned, the font looked slightly different. I know that sounds impossible. I know that sounds like the kind of detail an exhausted operator imagines, but I have a printed copy. The thermal printer produced it before the dashboard corrected. I am holding it now. The old heading says missing person. The corrected heading says unconfirmed observer. Under that is a column I have never seen in county software. Visual compliance status. Every entry reads failed. At 11:52 p.m., I covered the studio windows. There are 3 windows in this room. One faces the parking lot, one faces the transmitter yard, One faces the hill behind the tower. Only the hill window has a view of the sky. I pulled the blackout shade down. I taped the edges with gaffer tape. I turned the desk lamp away from the glass. I covered the clock face because it reflected too much of the room. I covered the coffee pot. I covered the framed station license. I covered the small silver strip around the old microphone. That strip is still uncovered at the bottom. I can see a red line in it when I move my head. I am trying not to move my head. If you are listening in a room with reflective surfaces, do not trust darkness. The moon does not need to be bright. The red does not behave like normal light. It appears in reflections that should be too small. It appears in glass that is facing the wrong direction. It appears in screens that are powered off. It appears on wet pavement. It appears in the black surface of a spoon. Cover what you can. Turn away from what you cannot. Keep your eyes low. At 11:56 p.m., the observatory sent the first spectral note. The red was not a smooth band. It was not ordinary Rayleigh scattering. It was not smoke, dust, ash, or high-altitude ice. It contained gaps, regular gaps, measured gaps, a pattern repeating inside the red wavelength band. The pattern was too slow to be a natural emission line, too regular to be weather, too clean to be sensor noise. And it appeared only when a human observer was in the optical path. That is the part I keep returning to. When the camera watched the moon alone, the moon was white. When a person watched the camera screen, the screen remained white. When a person looked through the optical telescope, the moon turned red. When that person stepped away, the recorded feed did not show what they saw. The red did not live in the image. It lived somewhere between the image and the mind. At first, I rejected that wording. It felt too dramatic, too unscientific, too close to superstition, so I wrote it another way in the incident log. Visual perception dependent anomaly. That sounded better. It meant the same thing. The danger needed an observer. The moon was not only being seen, it was using the act of being seen. At midnight, the station clock stopped. The wall clock stopped. The computer clock did not. The microwave in the break room did not. The emergency time base did not. Only analog clocks with reflective glass faces stopped at 12 o'clock. That may not matter. I am reporting it because, in an incident like this, useless details sometimes become the only useful things later. At 12:02 a.m., the first national monitoring station joined the relay. At 12:04 a.m., a coastal station reported the same red moon. At 12:04 a.m., at 12:04 a.m., at 12:05 a.m., a mountain station reported a white moon on camera and a red moon through the naked eye. At 12:07 a.m., a desert observatory reported staff loss after direct eyepiece exposure. At 12:08 a.m., a ham operator on shortwave said the red pulse was audible on frequencies where the moon should not matter. By 12:10 a.m., the pulse had entered our carrier. You may hear it now if your receiver is old enough. A soft lift in the static, a slight pressure, 2.5 seconds. Then again. This timing is uncomfortable because it resembles something real. Laser ranging experiments have measured distance to the moon by timing light sent to lunar retroreflectors and returned to Earth. The average round-trip light time is roughly the kind of interval a human ear can notice once it is repeated. 2.5 seconds is not magic, it is distance, a measure of how far away something should be. But the signal we are hearing is not a laser return. We are not firing a laser. This station does not have optical ranging equipment. This tower does not point at the moon. And still the interval is here. Pulse, silence, pulse, silence. As if something is measuring the distance back, not from Earth to the moon, from the moon to whoever is listening. At 12:13 a.m., the first instruction set appeared. That is not my phrase. That came from the observatory analysis. They were mapping the gaps in the red spectrum as if the gaps were data, not language, not voice, not a message. An instruction set, a sequence, the kind of thing a machine might read before it knows what the words mean. At 12:16 a.m., the observatory tried to render the pattern into a spectrogram. The result looked like a ladder, narrow horizontal steps, each step lower than the one before it, a descent. The technician who saved the file titled it Staircase. At 12:17 a.m., the file name changed to Viewing Order. At 12:18 a.m., The technician was removed from the file properties. At 12:19 a.m., the folder was empty. At 12:20 a.m., the printer in this room produced one line of text without receiving a print command. Do not render the red band. I did not touch the keyboard. The printout is still warm. I am placing it under the desk lamp now. No, I am not. The desk lamp has a metal base. I can see red in it. I am moving the paper by touch. At 12:23 a.m., a listener asked whether closing your eyes was enough. I cannot guarantee that. I wish I could. The reports we have suggest the initial trigger requires direct visual intake, but several exposures occurred through reflections. One exposure may have occurred through a dream, though that report is unreliable, because the person who reported it no longer appears in the call archive. Here is what we believe. Do not look at the moon. Do not look at live video of the moon. Do not look at photographs taken after 11:42 p.m. Do not look at red bands and damaged images. Do not stare into static if your screen shows a repeating red pulse. Do not use telescope eyepieces. Do not use binoculars. Do not watch someone else watch the moon. Do not ask for proof. A dangerous thing does not become safer because you need evidence. I know that is difficult. I know every part of your mind wants to check. I know the first instinct is to move the curtain with 2 fingers and look just once. That instinct may not belong entirely to you now. The visual system wants completion. The human brain hates unresolved light. A warning like this creates a hole in the mind. The moon is there. You know it is there. You want the shape. You want the color. You want to see whether the world outside matches the fear inside this room. That need is the hook. Do not feed it. At 12:28 a.m., I found my initials in the exposure list. Not my full name, just DH. The list came from a relay packet that should have contained tower maintenance data. It did not. It contained 34 sets of initials, arranged by time. Some were station staff, some were county dispatchers, some were observatory personnel, some I did not recognize. The final entry was DH, pre-transmission visual contact. The time beside it was 11:18 p.m. I did not look at the moon at 11:18 p.m. I was in this room. The blinds were open then, but I was facing the console. The hill window was behind me. The moon would have been behind my left shoulder. I did not turn around. I remember not turning around, but memory is not evidence tonight. At 11:18 p.m., I answered the first eclipse caller. At 11:18 p.m., I checked the desk monitor. At 11:18 p.m., I lifted my coffee mug. The mug was black ceramic, glossy, the kind that reflects a bright point if you tilt it under a studio light. I have not touched it since. It is sitting 2 feet to my right. The handle faces me. The liquid inside is cold. The surface is dark. I am not looking into it. I am saying this because if my name disappears before the end of this broadcast, I want the reason preserved. Not proven, preserved. There is a difference. At 12:31 a.m., the transmission map changed. Our station began receiving interference from bands we were not tuned to, shortwave fragments, weather radio cadence, aviation marker tones, amateur repeaters, old emergency test tones. They all carried the same 2.5-second lift. The red was not only in light anymore, or maybe it had never been only light. Maybe reflected sunlight was the visible edge of a larger structure. The moon is not a transmitter in the usual sense. It does not produce power. It reflects. It reflects sunlight. It reflects radar. It reflects laser pulses. It reflects the stories we have placed on it for thousands of years. Lovers, wolves, tides, calendars, madness, home. Tonight, it appears to be reflecting something with order inside it. Not speech, not intention in a way I can safely describe. Order, a shape that becomes active when watched. A pattern that uses the observer as the last missing component. That is the closest I can come. If this sounds too abstract, let me make it practical. Cover your windows, cover your mirrors, cover standing water. Turn picture frames face down. Do not stand near polished appliances. If you must move through your house, keep your eyes on the floor. If you are driving, pull over safely if you can do so without looking up. Do not use your rearview mirror. Do not check the sky through your windshield. If your passenger has looked, do not ask them what they saw. Keep your voice low. Keep them facing away from glass. If they begin describing the moon, interrupt them. Use sound, not touch if they are near a window. Sound. Say their name only if you are prepared for the possibility that the name may not remain stable. At 12:36 a.m., the observatory tried one controlled test. I do not approve of it. I am not defending it. I am only reporting what came through the relay before that relay became unreliable. They placed a covered optical sensor behind a red filter and opened the shutter for 1/10 of a second. No human eye was in the path. The camera recorded nothing unusual. They repeated the test with a live technician watching the sensor output through a shielded black and white monitor. Nothing unusual. They repeated the test with the technician watching the moon through indirect glass while wearing eye protection. The technician reported no red. Then the technician lifted the eye protection. For less than 1 second, the relay log shows a spike in the red band. The technician's badge ID vanished from the building system. The chair remained in the camera frame. The headset remained on the chair. The eye protection remained on the floor. The relay log then corrected itself to show that no technician had been assigned to the test. The test title changed from Controlled Visual Exposure to Unoccupied Shutter Trial. That is when the observatory stopped testing. That is when the county stopped calling it a missing person event. That is when I stopped believing we were dealing with disappearance as a physical movement. Movement leaves traces. This removes the need for traces. At 12:40 a.m., the phone lines became difficult to trust. Callers were still reaching the station, but some calls arrived with missing beginnings. A ring would sound. I would answer. The first word would already be in progress. Not cut off. In progress. As if the caller had been speaking before the call existed. Several calls had no caller breathing, no background noise, and no line hiss. Only room tone from this booth. That means the audio entering the line matched the audio already around me. That means either the calls were being made from inside the station, or the station was receiving itself through other people's phones. I checked the hallway. I did not look through the glass panel in the studio door. I looked at the floor. The hallway lights were on. The red exit sign at the far end looked normal. The chair beside the vending machine was still there. The coat rack was still there. The spare umbrella was still there. The overnight volunteer's jacket was not. There is no overnight volunteer tonight. I know there was. I know because he left the note. Moon looks low. The note is still here. The handwriting is no longer recognizable. The name on the schedule beside his shift is blank. The coffee cup he used is in the trash. The trash inventory log says 1 disposable cup, no owner. I am not going to search for him. I am not going to say his name. I am not going to preserve something by letting it pass through my mouth. The signal appears to like records. It uses them as handles. At 12:45 a.m., we received the first external confirmation that the moon was not red everywhere. Some regions reported a normal moon. Some reported cloud cover. Some reported no visible moon. But among stations that reported red visual exposure, the pattern was consistent. Direct watchers vanished. Witnesses forgot who they were looking for. Records corrected. Reflections expanded the hazard. Screens became uncertain only when live. Archived images taken before 11:42 p.m. remained safe. Images taken after 11:42 p.m. became unstable if viewed by a human. A photograph emailed to one station arrived as a red smear. The sender's account then lost its display name. The email remained. The attachment remained. The file size remained. The preview thumbnail became a blank gray rectangle. The subject line changed to "Do not open by sight." That phrase matters. By sight, not "do not open." Do not open by sight. The instruction did not forbid access. It forbade observation. That suggests the danger is not in the object. It is in the completion of a visual loop. Source, eye, recognition, removal. If the moon is a screen, then the human mind is the device that turns it on. At 12:51 a.m., I began reading from paper instead of the monitor. I recommend you do the same if you are taking notes. Paper is slower. Paper does not glow. Paper does not refresh itself behind your eyes. Paper can still change, as mine has changed, but it changes quietly. It does not invite you to verify with a click. The monitor on this desk now shows the station automation queue. The first 4 items are normal. Emergency continuity bed, weather delay notice, Tower generator check. Public safety bulletin. The fifth item was not there before. It is titled Moon Return Window. The duration is listed as 2:31. I did not load that file. I am not going to play that file. The system has attempted to queue it 3 times. Each time I cancel it, the duration shortens by 1 second. 2:31, 2:30, 2:29. I do not know what happens when it reaches 0. I have covered the monitor with a towel. I can still hear the automation relay clicking behind it. It clicks every 2.5 seconds. You may notice I keep returning to that interval. That is not because it explains the event. It does not. It is because horror becomes manageable when it has a number. 2.5 seconds lets me count. 2.5 seconds lets me know the room has not changed yet. 2.5 seconds gives my mind a railing to hold. But numbers can be bait too. A countdown is only comforting until it reaches the end. At 12:56 a.m., the county issued a blind protocol. I am going to repeat the practical version, stripped of language that may be unsafe to visualize. 1. Stay away from windows. 2. Do not observe the moon directly or indirectly. 3. Cover mirrors, glass, screens, water surfaces, and polished metal. 4. Use audio-only updates. 5. Do not share images of the moon. 6. If someone insists the moon is beautiful, move away from them. 7. If you cannot remember who is missing, do not force the memory. 8. If written records change, preserve the changed record without staring at the blank. 9. Do not name unverified missing persons on air. 10. Do not let curiosity become procedure. That last one was not in the county version. I added it because I can feel the pull. The longer I sit in this room, the more reasonable it feels to check one reflection. Not the window, not the moon, just the coffee, just the microphone ring, just the black curve of the dead monitor, just enough to know whether my warning is still true. That is how the hazard gets inside protocol. It does not tell you to disobey. It makes verification feel responsible. At 1:02 a.m., the station received a printout from the old fax line. We do not use the fax line anymore. Most nights it is not even connected. Tonight, it printed 1 page. No letterhead, no sender. Only a list of times. 11:18 p.m., 11:42 p.m., 11:51 p.m., 12:13 a.m., 12:28 a.m., 1:02 a.m., 1:17 a.m. The first 5 times were already behind us. The 6th was the moment the page printed. The 7th is still ahead as I speak. 1:17 a.m. below the times was a line I did not want to read, but I read it before I understood what it was. The broadcast will look up, not the broadcaster, the broadcast. That is the first time the event referred to this transmission as if it were capable of sight. I have covered the camera above the console. I have turned the studio webcam to the wall. I have pulled the towel lower over the monitor, but the microphone remains open. A microphone cannot look. A radio wave cannot look. That is what I keep telling myself. A voice can describe. A listener can imagine. And imagination is not sight. Not exactly. Not yet. So I will be careful. I will not describe the moon in detail. I will not give you its shade. I will not compare it to blood again. I used that word earlier because that is what people call a red eclipse. I will not use it again. I will say only this. The moon is red. Do not build the rest of the image in your mind. Let the sentence remain incomplete. At 1:07 a.m., the first person returned. That sentence is not accurate. A person appeared in a record. Not in a room, not on a porch, not in a hospital. In a record. The county dashboard restored 1 missing call entry. The caller name remained blank, but the incident notes reappeared. There were only 3 lines. Subject viewed lunar body. Subject failed removal. Subject remains adjacent. Adjacent to what? We do not know. The address field did not restore. The callback number did not restore. The voice recording did not restore. Only those lines. Subject failed removal. That phrase is worse than vanished. Vanished implies completion. Failed removal implies process. It implies that something can go wrong while a person is being erased. It implies that missing may not be the final state. At 1:09 a.m., a second restored entry appeared. Subject retained auditory boundary. At 1:10 a.m., A third, subject remains in carrier. At 1:11 a.m., the station's static changed. I am choosing my words very carefully. There are no voices in the static. There are no cries. There is no chorus. I know what cheap fear sounds like, and I am not going to invent it. What we heard was not voices. It was the shape of voices without speech, breath spacing, mouth noise without a mouth, the slight wet click before a word begins, human timing, distributed inside noise, as if the carrier had learned where people would have spoken, but not what they wanted to say. If you hear that in your receiver now, lower the volume. Do not put your ear close to the speaker. Do not try to identify anyone. Recognition may be another form of looking. At 1:14 a.m., the automation queue uncovered itself. I did not touch the towel. It slid, not far, just enough for the bottom of the monitor to show. I saw the blue edge of the playlist. I saw the file title, Moon Return Window, duration 2:17. It had stopped counting down, 2 minutes and 17 seconds, 137 seconds. That number is not familiar to me. It may mean nothing. It may be bait. I covered the monitor again. The towel is now weighted with the logbook. The logbook cover has a plastic sheen. I have turned it upside down. I am describing these ridiculous movements because, in a crisis like this, survival becomes small. A towel, a mug, a spoon, a window edge, a corner of a screen. You do not fight the sky. You manage surfaces. You make the room less able to betray you. You reduce the number of ways the universe can enter. At 1:17 a.m., the time printed on the fax page arrived. Nothing happened. That was the worst part. No alarm, no tone, no power surge. No red flash through the blinds. Nothing. The room stayed ordinary. The carrier held. The towel stayed in place. The microphone remained live. For 30 seconds, I allowed myself to believe the predicted line had failed. Then the station phone rang. One ring. No caller ID. I did not answer. It rang again. I did not answer. It rang a third time. The ring pattern changed. Not the sound, the spacing. 2.5 seconds. Ring. Silence. Ring. Silence. Ring. I unplugged the handset from the board. The ringing continued through the monitor speakers. The monitor speakers were muted. I switched them off. The ringing continued in the wall clock. The wall clock has no speaker. I took the clock down and placed it face down on the carpet. The ringing continued in the transmitter rack. Then it stopped. The fax machine printed a new line. Answered by observation. I did not answer. I did not look. That may no longer be the distinction. At 1:22 a.m., I began losing words from the station archive. Not random words. Visual words. Look. See. Watch. View. Observe. Moon. Window. Read. The automation transcript removed them first. Then the printed protocol removed them. Then my handwritten notes changed. Where I had written "do not look," the page now says "do not." Where I had written "cover windows," it says "cover." Where I had written "red moon," there is only a gap between two pressure marks. The language is becoming safer by becoming less useful. Or the hazard is removing the words that could hold it. Either way, I will continue. I may have to speak around the missing terms. If I pause, it is not because I do not know what to say. It is because I am checking whether the word is still safe to use. Do not look outside. That sentence survived. Do not look outside. Again, it survived. Good. Hold on to that one. At 1:26 a.m., the observatory relay ended. Not with a panic, not with a scream, with a formal closure. The last line read, "Facility entering non-visual mode." That is all. After that, the observatory feed transmitted only equipment status, door sensors, generator load, battery voltage, dome position, wind speed, no staff tags, no human entries, no access logs. The building was still there. The machines were still speaking. The people had become unnecessary to the record. I keep thinking about that. Machines do not vanish in the same way. Not yet. Cameras lose context, but not existence. Printers change words, but not paper. Clocks stop only if they reflect. Transmitters continue. The signal does not remove everything. It removes observers. Maybe because observers complete the circuit. Maybe because consciousness is the only surface polished enough. That is not science. That is a frightened man sitting under a towel-covered monitor at 1:29 in the morning, trying to make language carry more than it can. But sometimes the frightened explanation is closer to the shape of the truth than the official one. At 1:31 a.m., the public bulletin changed from warning to inventory. That was not my decision. The emergency system sent a new template. It asks stations to report the number of confirmed indoor listeners. Not missing, not safe. Indoor. How do you count people who obeyed a warning not to look outside? You cannot see them. You cannot verify them. You can only keep broadcasting and hope that silence means survival. So I am asking you now, without asking you to call, without asking you to text, without asking you to touch a screen. If you are indoors, stay there. If you are alive, stay quiet. If someone near you has vanished, do not search the room by sight. Use your hands, use sound. Call their name once if you must. Once. If the name feels wrong in your mouth, stop. Do not repeat it until it feels right. That may be how the event learns the shape of what to remove. At 1:36 a.m., I remembered the opening story. I should have started with it. Maybe I did. The archive says I did not. There was a boy in the first call cluster, 7 years old, according to the original notes. His family had been watching television when the screen went black during a storm advisory. The father stood up to check the window. The mother told him not to open the curtains because the room felt strange. The boy said the moon was already in the room. No one understood him, not at first. Then they saw red light inside the glass of the turned-off television. The father stepped between the child and the screen. He disappeared. The television remained black. The child said he could still hear him. Not from the room, from the weather radio. The mother called the station. By the time her call reached us, the father's name was gone. By the time the call ended, the mother no longer used the word father. She said there is someone missing from the house. Then she said there is space in the house. Then she said the room has too much room. I wrote that down. The room has too much room. That is the best description anyone has given tonight. When a person vanishes this way, the world does not feel empty. It feels overcorrected. A chair is not abandoned. It is slightly too centered. A table is not missing a cup. It has exactly the number of cups the record now believes it should have. A photograph does not show a gap. It becomes well composed. The horror is not that the world breaks. The horror is that it repairs itself around the loss. At 1:43 a.m., I checked the old reel recorder. The station keeps it for archive redundancy. It runs during emergency continuity because magnetic tape is stubborn. Not immune, just stubborn. The tape counter showed that it had been recording for 1 hour and 1 minute. That is impossible because I started emergency continuity less than an hour ago. I rewound 10 seconds. I did not listen through headphones. I played it low through the room speaker. My own voice came out, but it was not the sentence I had spoken. It was a sentence I had not reached yet. I heard myself say, "The moon does not need your eyes anymore." Then the tape clicked. Then my live voice, the voice I am using now, said nothing for several seconds, because I was listening to my recorded voice speak from ahead of me. That is another rule. Do not replay this broadcast while it is still happening. Do not run it on a delay in another room. Do not check whether I said something earlier. If the archive begins to anticipate the speaker, the recording may become another optical surface, not visual, temporal, a reflection in time. I know how that sounds. I also know that a black coffee mug may have exposed me before I ever turned around. We are past the luxury of normal-sounding warnings. At 1:48 a.m., the moon disappeared from all camera feeds, not from the sky. We do not know the sky. We are not looking. But every instrument feed that had shown a normal white moon now showed nothing. No moon, no stars behind it, no cloud, just an oval absence where the moon should have been. The cameras finally agreed that something was wrong, but only after human observation had become impossible to verify. The red had moved out of visible recording, or the cameras had been corrected. The telescope log called it post-observation masking. Then the term changed to no target. Then it changed to clear sky. The images remained wrong. The labels became calm. That may be the final stage. The anomaly does not need to make the world convincing. It only needs to make the words around the world less urgent. Clear sky, no target, unoccupied room, wrong number, no missing persons. If you hear official calm tonight, measure it against your room, not by looking outside, by counting what has changed around you. A chair shifted, a voice absent, a name you cannot finish, a memory that feels like it belongs to someone who moved away years ago. That is evidence. Quiet evidence is still evidence. At 1:55 a.m., the station's legal ID attempted to play automatically. It should have said AM 1720, serving the Tri-County region from the North Ridge transmitter site. It played 6 seconds of carrier tone. Then it played my voice. Not from tonight, from years ago. My first overnight shift. I was younger, faster, trying to sound calm because I thought calm was a style and not a discipline. The archived voice said the station name. Then it said, "If you can hear me, do not let him finish." I stopped the playback. The automation restarted it. I cut power to the automation rack. The transmitter remained live. The microphone remained live. The carrier remained live. The station is now bypassing parts of itself that should be required. There is a technical way to say that. There is a haunted way. The technical way is signal path unknown. The haunted way is the broadcast has found a shorter route. I prefer the technical way. I am no longer sure the technical way prefers me. At 2 a.m., I removed the station clock from the room. I did it by touch. The carpet near the wall is rough. There is a cable run along the baseboard. The clock frame is plastic, but the face is glass. I wrapped it in my jacket and pushed it into the hallway. I did not look up. The hallway smelled like dust and hot wiring. The exit sign buzzed. Something in the vending machine dropped by itself. I kept my eyes on the floor. Halfway back to the desk, I stepped on paper. It was the volunteer's note. Moon looks low. Only now it said, moon looks in. I did not pick it up. I slid it under the door with my shoe. That may have been a mistake. The hallway now has the note. The room does not. The room feels cleaner without it. Too clean. The kind of clean that comes after a record adjusts. I am keeping my hand on the desk so I can trust the room's shape. Microphone, mixer, lamp, logbook, covered monitor, cold mug. Do not touch the mug. No, I did not touch it. I touched the logbook. The mug is still to my right, I think. At 2:07 a.m., the first emergency station went silent. Not ours. A station west of the river. They had been repeating the same blind protocol every 5 minutes. Their final relay packet contained only a carrier level and transmitter temperature. No sign-off, no alarm, no distress flag. Just an unmanned transmitter doing exactly what it was built to do. At 2:09 a.m., a second station went silent. At 2:12 a.m., a third. But the red pulse remained on their carriers. That matters. Even when the voice stops, the interval remains. The event is not dependent on one speaker. It is not dependent on panic. It is not dependent on belief. It uses systems, light systems, record systems, broadcast systems, memory systems, human systems. The old fear was that someone was watching us. That is too simple. Tonight, the fear is that watching itself is a door, and the moon has become the handle. At 2:16 a.m., the towel over the monitor slipped again. This time, I saw more than the playlist edge. I saw the waveform. Not an image, a waveform. Audio. The file moon return window was not video. It was sound. That should have been a relief. It was not. The waveform had a repeating shape. Tall, short, tall, gap. Tall, short, tall, gap. It resembled speech enough to make the mind lean toward it. I did not play it. I will not play it. I am telling you this because some of you may be recording AM 1720 tonight. You may see an audio file after this broadcast. You may see a segment with that name. Do not render it visually. Do not open the waveform. Do not convert the audio to a spectrogram. Do not make the red band visible. If you must preserve this transmission, preserve it as sound. If you must share it with a warning. Do not turn the signal into something that can be looked at. That may be what it wants. At 2:21 a.m., my name disappeared from the station log. The on-air field now reads current operator, not Daniel Hale, not DH current operator. I expected to feel fear when that happened. Instead, I felt a strange relief. A name is a handle too. If the system cannot find mine, perhaps it cannot finish the removal. Or perhaps the removal is already far enough along that the name is no longer needed. I am still here. That is the important part. I am still speaking. I know the desk. I know the room. I know the warning. Do not look outside. Do not check the moon. Do not verify by sight. Cover reflective surfaces. Keep the broadcast audio only. If someone is missing, do not force the record. If the room feels too large, sit down and make sound. Tap the floor. Hum. Count. The world may correct photographs, logs, and names, but it has more difficulty correcting rhythm while you are still making it. So count with me if you need to. Not out loud if that scares you, just internally. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. You are still in the room. That is what matters. At 2:28 a.m., the carrier tone changed pitch, only slightly. The transmitter output remained stable. The board meter did not move, but the tone in the room lowered, as if the station had been moved farther away from itself. I checked the backup receiver. It was tuned to our own broadcast. Normally, that produces a tiny delay. Tonight, the receiver was ahead of me, by less than a second at first, then 1 second, then 2, then 2.5. I heard my own next breath before I took it. I heard the paper move before my hand moved. I heard the word outside before I said outside. I turned the receiver off. The room continued to anticipate me, not in sound, in expectation. That is difficult to explain. Imagine standing beside a door and feeling, with certainty, that someone on the other side has already heard you knock. Before your hand rises, that is the station now. Every sentence feels received before it is spoken. The moon does not need your eyes anymore. That is the line from the tape. I understand it now. The first stage required visual exposure. The second used records. The third used audio. The fourth may use anticipation. Once a system predicts the observer has already been shaped. I am going to slow down. Unpredictability may be useful, or it may not. At 2:34 a.m., the county dashboard returned one public status line. It said night conditions normal. The line remained for 11 seconds. Then it changed. Night conditions normal for non-observers. That is almost helpful. It implies there is still a boundary. If you have not looked, the night may remain normal. If you have looked, normal belongs to something else. The danger is not universal. That is important. Cosmic horror often feels absolute, but survival depends on boundaries. There is a line. Do not cross it. Do not let curiosity cross it for you. Do not let someone else's panic drag you to the window. Do not let a screen become a window. Do not let a reflection become proof. Do not let this broadcast become a picture in your mind. It is only a voice. Let it remain only a voice. At 2:40 a.m., I found another page under the logbook. I do not know when it printed. The top line was blank. The second line said, "Current operator retained auditory boundary." The third line said, "Visual record incomplete." The fourth line said, "Removal delayed." The fifth line said, "Complete by sign-off." I folded the page without reading further. That was the first time tonight I chose not to finish a document. I should have done that earlier. Not every record deserves completion. Not every line needs the dignity of being read. This may be the only advice that matters after all the procedures. You are allowed not to know. You are allowed not to check. You are allowed to leave the mystery unresolved if the answer requires you to offer yourself as evidence. Western culture trains us to solve. Science trains us to observe. Emergency systems train us to verify. Tonight, all three instincts can be turned against you. So choose the older instinct: shelter, darkness, sound, breath. A hand on the table, another person's voice from the next room, if they can answer without approaching the glass. A blanket over the mirror, a towel over the screen. The ordinary intelligence of not looking. At 2:46 a.m., the transmitter yard lights went out. The tower beacon remained red. I know that because the tower beacon flashes through a small status indicator on the board, not because I looked. The indicator is a tiny red lamp. It has always been red. Tonight, that fact feels cruel. I covered it with tape. The board alarm came on because the system believed the beacon was unreadable. I acknowledged the alarm by touch. The alarm stopped. Then the printer produced, "Beacon observed." I did not observe the beacon. The system did. That opens another possibility. Maybe machines can observe if humans build them to report. Maybe a status lamp is a kind of eye. Maybe covering the indicator came too late, because the board had already converted light into information. Do not over-apply that fear. You still need appliances. You still need radios. You still need hallway lights. The danger has shown strongest behavior through lunar imagery and red band patterning. But from this point forward, keep unnecessary indicators covered if they face you. Do not stare at blinking lights. Do not count tower beacons through curtains. Do not treat any repeating red signal as decorative. At 2:52 a.m. there was a knock at the studio door. 3 taps, human spacing, not 2.5 seconds. I did not answer. There should be no one in the building. The hallway camera is covered. The front door sensor shows closed. The side entrance sensor shows closed. The parking lot motion detector shows no movement. 3 taps again. The old part of my mind wanted to call out. The trained part wanted to identify the person. The frightened part wanted to be silent. I chose silence. The taps came a 3rd time. Then a piece of paper slid under the door. I am looking at it now without looking at the hallway. It is face down. The back is blank. I am not turning it over. A message that enters under a closed door at 2:52 in the morning can wait. If it is important, it will remain important unread. If it is dangerous, unread is the only safe state. This is another rule. Do not accept new visual information from unknown sources. Even paper, especially paper. At 2:58 a.m., the paper under the door moved by itself. Not toward me, back toward the hallway, slowly. As if the room had refused delivery. I heard it slide under the door. Then I heard nothing. I do not know whether there was anyone on the other side to take it. I am not checking. The transmitter remains live. The carrier remains stable. The moon remains unobserved from this room. And I remain, for now, current operator. At 3:03 a.m., the sky should have begun to pale in the east. Not sunrise, not yet, but a thinning, a weakening of the night. The weather system reported astronomical twilight on schedule. The exterior light sensor reported no change. The solar panel test rig on the roof reported no dawn rise. The moon hazard may be affecting the night beyond visibility, or cloud cover may have moved in, or the sensors may be untrustworthy. I am not going to build a larger theory than the evidence can carry. That is how fiction becomes nonsense. That is how emergency information becomes myth. We know only this. At 11:42 p.m., the moon appeared red to direct human observers. After direct observation, people were removed from physical presence and from records. The effect spread through reflections. The red band pattern showed ordered gaps. The pattern entered radio carriers. Records began anticipating events. The station log removed operator names. The current operator remains audible. Those are the facts inside this broadcast. Everything else is interpretation. Even fear should have discipline. At 3:09 a.m., I received one more relay packet from a station that had gone silent. It contained no audio, only a carrier signature and a timestamp. The timestamp was tomorrow night. Same hour, same minute, same 2.5-second pulse. That suggests recurrence, or duplication, or a clock error. I prefer clock error, but the packet included our station ID in the metadata, not their station, ours. AM 1720, transmission origin, current operator, transmission status, previously received. If this broadcast is being received before it is sent, then some of you may be hearing it at the wrong time. You may hear this tomorrow, you may hear it next month, you may hear it after the sky has already returned to normal. If so, do not assume the danger is gone because your window looks safe. Do not check. Search official astronomy calendars if you must, but do not look at live red lunar imagery tied to this event. Use text, use audio, use someone you trust who has not observed directly, but do not let this transmission make you curious enough to recreate the loop. A warning can become a lure when the event is patient. At 3:15 a.m., I began preparing sign-off. Not because the event is over, because my voice is changing. I can hear it in the room. Not distortion, not possession. Fatigue, maybe, or removal. Words arrive with less weight. My hands feel farther from the desk. The microphone feels close, but my chest feels distant. I have been awake for too long. I have been speaking into a system that may be learning the shape of my speech, so I will leave the instructions one final time. Do not look outside. Do not check the moon. Do not use reflections. Do not watch live images. Do not render red band audio into visible form. Do not repeat missing names. Do not complete unknown messages. Do not verify warnings by exposing yourself to the thing warned against. Stay with sound. Stay with touch. Stay with low light that does not face the sky. Stay with the ordinary objects that have not changed. And if the room feels too large, that does not mean you are alone. It may mean the world has edited someone badly. Speak carefully. Keep them in sound if you can, but do not let grief drag your eyes to the window. At 3:19 a.m., the board shows a new operator login. There is no one here. The login field is blank. The password field is filled. The system accepted it. The automation queue has one item: moon return window. Duration 000. The file is not playing. The waveform is flat. The carrier tone is steady. The monitor is covered. And yet the VU meter is moving. Something is entering the transmitter without sound. I am going to keep talking over it. A human voice may not stop this, but it may cover the shape long enough for someone to turn away. That is enough. Tonight. Enough is not victory. Enough is a few more seconds with your eyes closed. Enough is a child facing the wall instead of the glass. Enough is a driver pulling over before curiosity lifts their head. Enough is one listener leaving the image unresolved. At 3:22 a.m., the old legal ID returned. This is AM 1720, serving the Tri-County region from the North Ridge transmitter site. Inside the world of this recording, the following rule remains in effect. Do not look at the red moon. I am Daniel Hale, current operator. For as long as that means something, I am going to sign off now. If the carrier remains after my voice stops, do not listen for hidden words. If the station restarts from the beginning, do not compare the opening line. If my name is missing, do not try to restore it. Let missing things stay missing until daylight. Let daylight prove what it can. Let the night go unanswered. This has been AM 1720 Emergency Continuity. Windows covered. Visual contact avoided. Carrier stable. Operator present. Operator present. Operator, do not look outside. Do not check the moon. Do not open your curtains to see whether this broadcast is telling the truth. This is AM 1720. Current operator. At 11:42 p.m., the moon turned red and people are missing.